And it's recording. Okay, so my name's Terry Vidal. Today's date is May the 28th, 2013. I'm with Harriet Hart. We are here to do our first oral history project with the Molinaris, John and Doris. We are in the patio of their house, and it's 12:05 in the afternoon. Okay, we got to do that first, and now we can begin with the general questions.
Are you ready? Okay. What is your full name?
Doris Giles Molinari.
Yes.
John Baptist Molinari.
Thank you. And the date and place of your birth?
I don't know when I was born.
January 29, 1926.
1926.
Say that again. January.
January 29, 1926.
Where?
In
McKeesport.
McKeesport. No.
You were born in the hospital. Okay.
In the hospital? Should I say the hospital?
No.
He's bugging you.
No. Come on. The
You were born in McKeesport. You lived in Gravosburg.
Dravosburg.
Okay.
You're born in where?
That's Dravosburg.
Ravosburg, where?
Dravosburg.
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania.
Ravosburg, Pennsylvania.
And John, your date and place of birth?
I was born December 25,
Wow.
1920 in Lockport, Pennsylvania.
Lockport, Pennsylvania.
Okay. So, now, I think the easiest is to start with Doris and then go that way. What is the highest level of education you achieved, Doris?
You want me to answer?
Well,
first?
if she's having
tell
trouble,
me.
sure.
Tell me.
She was what they call all but dissertation for a doctorate
Okay.
in psychology.
Wow.
What university?
That was at the Professional School of Psychology in San Diego.
Okay. And you?
I have a master's degree in education from the University of Pittsburgh.
Okay. Thank you. So, what was your career prior to moving to Lakeside?
My career. Well, I did well in school,
Yes.
and I was popular in the school quartos.
The last thing she did, she served as teacher professor
Yes.
for the Los Angeles Unified School District in adult education.
Okay. So she had a fairly long career.
Yes, she did.
And yourself?
She taught in elementary school as well. And when we first moved to California, she taught in a parochial school. Would you believe with 60 first graders without an assistant?
Wow.
And
And what did you do?
I was a school psychologist for the Los Angeles Unified School District
Ah,
for the last 10 or 12 years.
okay. Two psychologists, Terry. Yes, behave yourself. So, question number 5. How long have you lived at Lakeside? Visiting temporarily or permanently?
We came down, probably 1975 was the first time. We had an old Volkswagen and we would drive the roads of Mexico down here. And we moved here in 1979.
Okay. So, who or what made you decide to move here?
Well, when we came down here, this town was a lot different back then.
We're going to get to those questions.
And we were up on the highway and looking down, and you could see all the trees and the flowers. It was beautiful, you know. And Doris said, boy, I would like to retire here. And that was a few years before we actually did. You know.
Okay, so you went on an exploratory trip and fell in love with it, sort of. Okay.
So that was in 1975. You came down here,
About that.
and how did you hear about the place? I mean, why did you come to Ajijic, Mexico?
For no reason.
No,
We came down from Nogales, and we went to Guadalajara, and somebody there said, you should go out Lakeside, it's beautiful out there.
We did.
We were just wandering around.
okay.
Okay. So where did you live immediately before moving to Lakeside? And for how long did you live
We
there?
lived in Agoura Hills, California. We lived in California since late in 1955.
Okay. And in, what was the name of the town? Agora?
Agoura Hills.
Agora Hills. How long did you live there?
We lived there for about 24, 25 years. Before that, the first house in California was in I'm going blank. Anyway, I remember it cost $17,500. Hardwood floors and lasting plaster.
Why did you leave to come to Mexico?
Part of it, eventually, when we moved here for good, part of it was financial. When I retired, we had the big house up there, and we had already purchased this house, and we didn't want to live in two houses on a retirement pay.
Yeah.
So that's what we did.
Okay. So what possessions did you bring with you, and why?
We brought a lot more than we should have.
Yeah.
We thought it would be difficult to buy things here. But looking in the back, I think if we'd have just brought the piano, maybe, we could have bought stuff for less than we paid to ship it down.
So what was the journey like? The trip down?
Well, we had made many trips down.
So did you hire a moving company?
Yeah, we hired them, but, they, like 4 or 5 or a month, 2 months later, it came when you make these arrangements. But we always traveled a lot when we were in the States, and so we continued doing it here.
Okay. What did the family members who stayed behind think of your move?
They liked it because we sold them the house at a very good price. We sold it to our daughter, and she had 3 children at that time, and so we did that.
Okay. Can you remember your first impressions of Lakeside?
It was wonderful.
I mean, everything was favorable. There's no one impression except the overall thing was very appealing. And like I said, it was a lot different at that time than it is now. One little thing will show you the difference. The fishermen down here used to use a big net, and they would 2 or 3 of them would walk along the pier pulling in the net, the others were down. And then they would put the fish on one lane of the highway up here to dry. Any occasional car would go around, there was no problem.
Before you move on,
Yes.
we forgot to put how many children do you have?
We have 1 natural daughter and 1 adopted daughter.
Okay.
The adopted daughter is now dead, unfortunately. She died at 67.
Okay. The natural daughter's name?
Gina.
Gina.
The other was Mercedes.
Okay.
Which one now? Which one now?
She adopted him as Mercedes. She died.
Okay.
Okay, now,
Mercedes is the one that died.
Mercedes.
now we're going to get to the part you want to get to. And I'm going to time us. Okay, this is the Neil James part.
Well, we're doing fine on time,
Good.
so we've
Yeah.
got an additional 5 minutes from that.
Okay, good, all right. So, did you know Neil James personally?
Yes, we did. Can I just talk a little bit about? We first met Neil James when a friend of ours had asked us to come down because she had put $500 down on a house in Mexico, and she wanted us to see it. And so this was the house.
This house?
This is the house. And I remember she was talking to Neil James. She had looked at a house in Vista Del Mar, which at that time was a dirt road going out there. And she said, Neil, I don't know why you're charging so much for this house. I looked at a house in Vista Del Mar that was newer than this and had a central island in the kitchen. And Neil interrupted her and said, a shack in Ajijic is worth more than a mansion in Vista.
Yeah.
At that time, it was hard to get out there, especially when it rained. But anyway, that's it.
Okay. So you knew her personally.
Now with this house, then, like I said, a friend had put $500 deposit,
Yes.
and her son came down, who was about 15 at the time, and he said, I wouldn't live in this dump. And she got all excited and said, what am I going to do? I have 500. And this one, without saying anything to me, he says, don't worry, Shirley, we'll give you your $500 deposit and we'll buy the house. That's what she said.
Well, I thought it was okay to say it. I meant it.
You're in it. So your relationship to Neil James, neighbor, friend,
Yeah,
you bought the house for
when
her.
we bought the house, she said, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to give you an extra meter because at that time the wall met right at the corner of the house. And she said, you can't walk around. So if you want to tear the wall down, I'll give you an extra meter of land and you can walk around. So that's what she did. And she said, when you put the wall in, put a gate in so we can walk back and forth.
So she was
So
your
we did.
next door neighbor?
She lived right here.
Right. Okay. So
Not
you knew
now.
her. No.
Yeah. she lived
So
right there.
so now this is the question you're waiting for. Tell me about her.
She was a strong woman.
Yes.
And you know about her accident probably. She was always exploring, and when there was the big earthquake, I can't remember what it was, and the mountain
Yes.
exploded, and she was near it, and she crawled under a sign. There was a big road sign, and she crawled under that, but she broke her leg. And they took her to the hospital, and while she was recuperating, she said, a German man said, when you leave the hospital, you should really go out to Ajijic to recuperate. Because he said, it's real pleasant out there, and the weather's beautiful. And all. So she did. We fell in love with the place and bought all this land. She owned the land across there and throughout the town. And I guess she had about 17 houses and apartments that she had built and had them all rented. So she was quite wealthy. In fact, somebody said that she had one of the largest accounts at both Lloyd's at that time and Banamex. And she died a pauper, so you know what happened.
No.
She signed power of attorney to different people. No, she was losing it.
Yeah.
And they would say, Neil, you can't take care of all this. If you sign this, I'll take care of everything for you. And she would do this to different people, you know. So, and at that time, the Mexican law was
How long were you next door neighbors? How many years?
unfortunately, we didn't live here full time at that time because we didn't move down here full time until after I retired. So it was like 85, 86.
And what year did
So
she?
we used to see her all the time. We'd come down for Christmas and in the summer and stuff like that. But when when she was in her last days, like I said, they had to take care of her. And they would come with some money, and they'd take her to get her hair done and things like that. But she had no money. Out of all of that she had no money left. And she had a sister, Jane Loomis, who lived in Vista, California, was married to General Loomis, who was a Marine Corps general. And she wanted nothing to do with this. She told Neil, give it to whoever you want. I don't want any parts of it, you know. So I remember Neil said, I don't know who I'll leave this to. She said, I know I have two.
Hey, Andy. Andy.
Okay.
Hold on a second.
That's probably the water truck.
Yeah, it is. It's okay. It's
Andy.
okay.
Andy. That's enough now. Okay.
Neil said, I know I have two nieces who live in Mississippi. She said, I never saw them, but I think I'll maybe leave it to them. And at that time, Arthur Melby was president of the LCS, and they owe a big debt to Arthur Melby. We would meet here with Arthur, and there were 3 or 4 others. I can't remember all the names though. But we'd sit out here and talk about ways we could convince her to leave it to the Lake Chapala Society. And Arthur Melby is really the one who did the most to convince her that her name would live in perpetuity here and all this sort of thing, you know. So she eventually did.
And
Up
what,
to that time, it was just the house along there. There was the Mexican library there, and then the other library there. So then she used to say, you know what I would like to have on this property? She said, Sunday concerts for the Mexican people, where they could bring their lunches and sit and listen to music. You know. Her face would light up.
did they ever do that? No.
No. It was never done.
Keep going through all your list of stuff that you'd written down.
Okay.
Tell us all the things you want to tell us. We still
Is
have
this all about Neil
we still have
James?
quite a bit.
Yeah, all of this was
Okay, well,
different
yeah,
things.
let us know what you got about her.
Uh,
I'll let you signal me when you think I should move on, okay?
one time, I don't know if the plaque is still over there, but their name on it says Neil James Camel. Is that still
I
around?
haven't seen that, no.
Anyway, it was some honor from Chapala, I think. And I said, Neil, were you married? And she said, yeah, for a little while. I said, what happened? She said, he expected me to stay home. So that didn't last long. She never married again. One time she was telling us about, she said, about a round-the-world trip. And I said, Neil, did you take, was that a cruise ship you went on? And she said, no, it wasn't a cruise ship. I said, oh, well, how'd you do it? She said, I went on a riverboat, I went on the back of a camel, on a canoe. And she said it took months to do it, but we went around the world. And then came home from the last place somewhere in Asia on a tramp steamer.
Boy.
So that must have been quite an exciting trip she had. I told you about that, that one. She had an old red Volkswagen that she hardly had. She was a terrible driver. Every fender was butt in, the bumpers both sides were butt in. One time, there was a friend of hers who lived down here, and I can't think of her name, but she was about Neil's age, real old. And she used to wear a big ribbon in her hair and paint up her face. I wish I could think of her name. But she would drive the car too. And one time, Doris said, "Oh, would you take me up?" She was going for something. So Doris got in the car. And going up, she bumped into a pole. And also Doris said, "Where I have to go is right at this corner on Constitution." She got out of the car.
I had to.
But anyway, then the car hadn't been driven for a long time, and we had a friend come down, a couple, and Neil said, "If you can get the car started, you can use it." So this fellow was trying to start, it wouldn't start. He got the battery charged, it wouldn't start, and he was taking it. And the air cleaner was partly on and partly off. So he took that off, and there was a hornet's nest inside. So eventually he got it started, and we used that. But when she was losing it, the same people who did everything, one of her Mexican friends said, "Give me the key to the car." She said, "You can keep the key and use the car." So he took it, and then the car disappeared. I guess he sold it. But she had quite a bit of jewelry, and she'd have it laying around up there. And the same man said, "Neil, somebody's going to steal this from you. Why don't I put it all in a sack and keep it for you?" So he did.
He was the one.
But she used to put money in a book, you know, and he knew that. The maid was telling us, look, we didn't see most of this because we weren't here, but the maid she had told us all this, and he would go through the book and take out all the money that he'd find in the money. So, and another thing that I thought was quite interesting, she never trusted milk that you buy at the store.
No?
So she had this man who used to come on a horse with the cans on his side.
Yeah.
And he would come, and he had a ladle, and she would bring out her thing, and he would fill up her with the milk. That's the only milk she would use. And one time we were going to take his picture. I went out with the camera, and he was there, and he went, no, and got all excited. No. And somebody told me later, it was a lot of the old Mexicans thought that this would like remove your soul if somebody took your picture, you know, stuff like that. And she hardly ever ate meat, but she would buy meat for her dogs. She had two big dogs, Mariposa and...
I don't remember either.
Mariposa,
What kind of dogs?
Oh, and La Mancha was the other one. Mariposa was a German Shepherd. La Mancha, I don't know, he was big, but he wasn't a German. I don't know what kind he was. But she would get the meat and feed the dogs the meat, but she wouldn't eat. She had a garden out there and big compost piles with lots of tlacuaches. You know what they are, the tlacuaches? The animal with the long nose.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
The opossums.
Yeah, I guess that's, yeah. They used to run around.
In the compost?
Well, they used to live in the compost pile, I guess.
We still have them.
And then in the evenings when we were here, along about 6 o'clock, we'd hear Neil, "Anybody for a walk?" He'd yell over the wall here. And so we'd go for a walk with him. And I remember one time my sister was down here, and my sister was probably 12, 13 years younger than Neil. But Neil says, "I'll walk slow so you can keep up." So we used to walk along there, and there was a boat that was up on the shore out past where the Nueva Posada is now. So we'd walk there. And then we'd sit on there for a while on the side of the boat. And then we'd walk back and then sit on the wall down there and watch the sunset. That was before that monstrosities on the pier there. You know, when they built that pier, that restaurant, they had to have soldiers here. A lot of the townspeople were saying, we're going to blow this thing up here. I wish they would have.
Yeah.
But a lot of the old people who lived here have never been in that place. They won't go in. We've never been in there. Let's see what else. You want a little more?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, see what else we have. Oh, when the last time we saw her, and we had to go back, like I said, we didn't live here full time then. And when we came back, she was dead. But the last time, she was in bed. And Doris said, Neil, why don't we go on a trip together? And she sat up in bed, and her eyes got bright. And she said, where'll we go? And Doris said, you think about it, and wherever you want to go, when we come back next time, we'll go there. And she was real happy. But we never made it. Never made it. Remember that, Doris?
Mm-hmm. Sure is.
Oh, and another strange thing, I don't know if anybody ever told you, but she brought silkworms from Japan.
I heard that, yes.
And she had them, I think it was across the street where she had some of the trees that they was in. And she brought on a long white dress. It was quite old, but it was a full-length white dress. And she said, you know, this was made from the silk that the silkworms made. I wonder whatever happened to that dress. That would have been something you could have.
Am I
on
allowed to tell my
display.
dress story?
We have a box of stuff that I've never looked into. Maybe, who knows? Maybe it's in there.
And I had a dress. Did you ever? You know
The Neil James one.
Yes.
Yes. The
I
red one.
bought a red dress at a consignment shop. It was Lois Cugini's consignment shop, and it was very distinctive and very old and kind of smelled musty, but it was all embroidered in red. And then one day I came to LCS and I looked up and I see the portrait of Neil James and she's wearing that dress. So I got the dress and ran over and gave it, and they used it in the portrait. So I think some of her things probably are still floating around.
And that's the dress that she's modeled in
Yes.
on the children's art mural.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Don't know how Lois Cugini got it. We should. Somebody donated it.
See what else would be interesting. One time she was talking about lawyers. You know, she had to deal with them with all these properties and all that. And she said, I had to deal with lawyers on all my trips. They're everywhere in the world. They're all the same. She said they all lie, steal, and cheat. She said they must teach them that in law school.
Oh dear.
Was your husband a lawyer?
The first one was. I left him.
And that big tree where you have, when she died, that black man. The last time we were here, she was sitting out there, and we were with her, and she had lost the limb. She said, you see that tree? I planted that when it was this big. She said. Then she'd talk about it, and then 2-3 minutes later, she said, you see that tree? I planted it when, you know, it kept going over and over the same thing. How they took advantage of that woman. I told you about that. Oh, when our daughter, and we have our adopted daughter had a daughter who was about the same age as our daughter, about a year younger than our daughter. So we had the 15 años down here, you know, for the two of them. So we arranged it all, and we arranged with Italo. At that time was the big place after the ceremony. And Neil got all dressed up, and her stepfather came down at that time to be here. And he had a suit on, she was all dressed up, and she took his arm and they walked up there to the church together.
She was quite the lady.
She's quite the lady. I don't know, I think, let's see. Pretty much that's about it for now. If you have any other questions, you can ask me if it comes to mind.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Well, let's move on.
But just remember now that Arthur Melby
Okay.
was the one who got her. We helped a little, but he's really the one who did it and had her leave the property to.
Well,
That
this
segues
is-
into the next
yes,
question.
this comes into the next section, which is on the Lake Chapala Society. So, what was the Lake Chapala Society like when you first arrived?
Well, like I said, there was just a little Mexican library there.
Yeah.
And there was this, what was her name? The heavy Mexican woman. It was real nice. It was a good friend of ours.
Yeah,
I can't think of her name.
Angelita?
No.
No.
But she was real good with the Mexican children. And you know, this one, at that time, the first lecture she gave here to the Mexican women, it was through the, oh boy, I wish I could remember names. The artist who was right here on 16th of September, it was gay, and had and they were in charge of the Ajijic Children's Association or something. I forget what it was called. But they asked us if she would, so they publicized it around here. And I wasn't here, I had to be working, but it was written up in that magazine that comes out every week and all. They were standing outside, the whole room was full outside, and she was giving a lecture on prenatal care and things like this. And it started to rain while she was talking. And these women who were out in the rain didn't want to miss anything. They stood in the rain and listened to all this. So she gave a series of lectures on that at that time.
And that was at the Lake Chapala Society? Like, right?
It wasn't through Lake
No,
Chapala,
but it
they,
was-
they used that for the first time, and then they got a bigger place somewhere after they saw how many people came.
So, there was a Mexican library.
And then there was the American, the English
Okay.
library.
So, what need did LCS meet in the community?
They always did provide whatever was like for the foreign population, they would try to provide the equivalent to the Mexican population. They always had that in mind pretty well.
Okay. Are you currently a member of LCS?
Yes, we are.
And have you seen the organization evolve? Have you seen the organization evolve?
Oh, it has tremendously. I don't know if it's better now or not, but it is evolved. It's big. And when things become very large, they lose the personal quality that they have when they're small.
Do you think there's an important role for LCS to play now
Oh, yeah.
And in the future?
Yes, I do. As
Yeah.
long as they continue to keep the native population in mind also.
Yes.
You got to do that. When Neil died, there were many of the Mexicans were pretty unhappy with the way it evolved because they knew what she liked. You know, like I was telling you about music on Sundays in the park and all this sort of thing. They knew that's what she was talking about. You know, it's never happened. But I think the feelings now are generally pretty positive about it.
Good. Well, now I'm going to move on to the environment. 5 minutes on that. And that's the physical environment here. So, can you describe the quality of the physical environment of Lakeside then, when you came, and now?
If I were to make one thing is different is the number of automobiles.
Oh, yes.
Like I said before, occasional car would go by. That's how it was. And now on a weekend you can hardly get out on the highway, as you know. So that's one of the biggest things. I think in the early days there was a little bit friendlier relationship between the Mexicans and the few Americans were here. And
That leads into this, the second question is actually the social environment. So, it was more friendly before.
And again, there were not as many, you know. I think a lot of people now, they see Americans and Canadians living in gated communities, you know. And this is so un-Mexican. At that time, it was at least so un-Mexican. I know in Guadalajara now they have gated communities for Mexicans too. But some of them resented things like that.
So, what were the Mexican expat relationships like then?
Like I said, it was generally good. Like we had a lot of Mexican
Oh,
friends.
Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead. I just wanted
And-
to go ahead.
And people would come out from Guadalajara on weekends, and they almost seemed anxious to become friends. And we had good friends that we've had, like for 30 years, 40 years. Mexican. Like the other day, people that I had almost forgotten completely rang the bell, and they took us out to lunch, and I could hardly remember them. But they said, "Oh, you remember Conchita? We were there when
Okay, how would you describe the Mexican expat relationships now?
Oh, in general, it's positive. Like I said, there are some people who think there are too many of us here, but that's okay. It's a nice place, and you have to expect that in nice places.
True. Well, now,
Hold on a
yes?
sec. Talk about the lake. Talk about what was the lake like when you first arrived versus how it is
It
now.
had, the biggest difference was they had a lot of fish in the lake at that time. Mostly the small ones. And like I said, they used to drive them up on the highway, and then they'd put them in the little styrofoam plates. And then Chapala, I guess they still do that with those dried fish.
The charel?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the
But then, at one time, the lake was up the street here. It was probably up as far as your main gate down there. And I remember a gardener that we had that time, old Dinero Jose. A snake came out of the water and was in our yard here. And he got this thing and cut its head off. He said, "Oh, that's a bad one."
Boy.
Somebody else said they're not poisonous, but he said it was.
what year do you think that might have been?
Oh boy, I don't remember. That's before we lived here full time, I know, so 79, 60, 60 maybe 60, I don't know. No, I can't say what time. I really don't know. I don't
Okay.
remember. And then were you here when it was real low?
I wasn't, but I've seen
You
pictures.
were. I mean, that was more than 100 yards out from the pier there.
They had a baseball diamond in Chapala. That's how far out it was, right
But
on
they
the...
still have those sticks out there where somebody sold people the land.
Oh dear. Okay, well, we're down to the last section.
Okay.
And this is Mexico. All right. What are the 3 most important world events that have happened while you have lived in Mexico?
The world events. The one that was the most shocking, of course, was the 2 airplanes in New York at the
9/11.
World Trade Center.
Yeah.
That's the most shocking. Probably the election of Barack Obama as president, probably. I never thought a black would be elected president in my lifetime. Like it still hasn't happened for Jewish or, you know. What else? Well, for us, they didn't relate to Mexico, but the trips we took to Italy, we found a large family on my father's side.
John.
Hoy no, gracias.
Okay, well, we're focusing on what happened in the world. There might be a question that relates to that later. What do you love about Mexico?
Oh, the people, that's the same. Like we have, I don't know why she's hiding, but we have a wonderful maid who comes 4 times a week and is real good with Doris. And Doris needs some help now, and she really helps her.
Have you got a favorite holiday?
What, in Mexico? My favorite holiday is Dia de Navidad, because that's my birthday.
I bet.
That's cheating.
Food?
What?
You have a favorite Mexican dish?
No, not really. We go out to eat just about every day. Now, any day that Doris can make it, we go out sometimes 2 times a day. We like Doña Lola especially. Do you like that one?
Yes, yes, it's my neighborhood
What type
hangout.
of food do you? What's your favorite food though?
Is that here? I get the filete de pescado veracruzana. That's the one with
Yep,
the
olives
red-
and tomatoes.
I like that. And they make a real good chicken burger, which isn't with a patty, but a big piece of chicken.
And the best guacamole in town.
The best guacamole.
It is.
Yeah.
What about Mexican culture? Is there something about the culture? The music, dance, something you like in particular?
I just like the Mexican people.
Okay. So, next question. Do you interact frequently with the Mexican community? If yes, in what ways?
Mostly the way I just said, with the maid here, the Mexican friends who stop in, and going out to the Mexican restaurants.
Now, the next question, were they welcoming, the Mexicans, when you arrived?
Yes, really,
Yes.
well, very much so.
So can you name a few Mexicans that have touched your life here?
Not really.
No?
No, I don't want to
Okay.
say anything.
Okay.
particular.
How would you describe Mexican expat relationships then and now? I think we asked that question already.
Yeah.
Okay.
One friend that we had since we first came here were the people who live at the corner, Jorge and Felisa Perales. They've been friends forever, you know. And when she makes pozole and stuff like that, we're always invited.
Lucky. Who are the early expats that influenced the community? You mentioned that one gentleman.
Arthur Melvin.
I should write that
And,
down. Okay. Arthur, what's his last name?
Melby.
Melby.
He's on a list of your officers in the book.
Okay. Who else? Think of anybody else?
What was the question?
Who were the early expats that influenced the community?
One thing I forgot to mention that was very interesting. There was a woman in town who claimed to be a Russian princess. Have you ever heard that? And
So-
she used to dress in black with a black hat and ride side saddle on a horse through town.
Sounds more
She
like
did influence.
entertain the community rather than influence them. Okay.
What was her name? Did she have a name?
I forget. I'm getting old. I forget names.
So, how would you describe the expat community back then?
Back then, since there were a lot fewer, it was a closer knit group, especially on those who lived here then full time. They had a very close relationship. I'm trying to think of a couple of those when you said who influenced what. I can't remember their names now. But anyway,
Okay. How would you describe the expats now? The expat community? Okay.
no, most of them have adapted well.
Yeah.
What, like I said before, living separately from the town in their own gated communities, they have a harder time integrating with Mexicans. They have their maid and their gardener, and that's pretty much it, really.
When do you think the big population went from a few expats to a lot of expats? When did that happen, in your mind?
There were, with the Canadian population, was almost directly related to a book that a Canadian wrote that said, "Live in paradise for $5 a day," I think it was called. And when that came out, people came out. I remember we were sitting somewhere, and I talked to two different people who are Canadians, and both of them said they read the book and they came right down to see this place.
Living in Paradise for $5 a day. I have to Google that, see what its publication
yeah, I
date is.
haven't heard of that.
Do you know when we first came down, there were a lot of people living here on a Social Security check, and they could rent a little place and eat on a Social Security check. Can't do it now. Can't do that now.
That leads into this question. All change has positive and negative elements. Can you think of some of the positive changes expats have brought to the lakeside and some of the negative ones?
Well, the positive ones, they bring a lot of culture, like at the auditorium they have it. And sometimes some Mexican people go to those performances, And I think they raised economically the standard of living for many of the Mexicans. Because certainly the wages in Ajijic are different than they are in most of Mexico.
What are some of the negative changes that the expats have brought?
Automobiles.
Yes.
But of course, the last 8 or 10 years, Mexicans can buy automobiles on time like they can in the States. So they have hundreds and thousands of them too.
Okay, so how has the community evolved?
Got bigger.
Yeah.
More of everything.
What would you like to see happen here?
Where?
Lakeside.
Yeah.
Lakeside. I would say I hope no more gambling casinos come in, things like
I
that.
thought you were going to say you didn't want any more Canadians, and I'm Canadian.
Oh, no.
I'm
No,
just kidding.
most of our friends turn out to be Canadians. I've got one funny thing one time, right here at the corner by your main gate up there. There was a car parked there, and a guy backing down until he hit the other car. And just then the man who owned this other car came out and said, "Hey, what are you doing there, guy?" So the guy got out and he said, "I'm sorry." He said, "Are you Canadian by any chance?" And the guy said, "No, I'm not. Are you?" He said, "Yeah." And the guy said, "It figures."
Oh dear. Okay. Can you predict what Lakeside will be like in 10 years?
From some of the things I've heard, somebody said there are going to be 1 million people living on both sides of the lake in the future. And up on the hill and all this. I kind of don't believe it, anything like that. I sure hope it doesn't. Did you hear that? They said they're going to develop the other side as much as this side and have all this stuff on there.
Well, there's certainly a lot of development going on right now towards Hokotepec.
But
Okay.
that happens any nice place in the world.
That's true. So we have one final question. Who else should we interview?
Oh, all our old friends are gone. Sylvia and Hal, they had their house for 25 or 30 years. I mean, a different house, but they're not here now. But they're
Perkins.
Sylvia and Hal Perkins.
Write that down.
Sylvia and Hal Perkins. Where are they now?
They live on Juarez over here.
Okay.
But you said they're out of town. Where
Oh yeah, they live in Louisiana, in Lafayette, Louisiana.
But they have a place here still.
When do they come down?
They stay away about 3 months at a time, and then they come back for a couple months. And they go back and forth.
Any idea when they'll be back?
It's been about a month and a half. I would say, what month is this now? This is May, end of May. They'll probably be here in July. I would.
Okay.
Okay.
Anybody else?
Who else do we know that's still living? The Parkers have gone. Betty and Jim Parker have been around for a while.
Okay.
They're members of Lakes Palisade, I'm pretty sure.
Great. Okay, well, we're actually right on time.
You've done a great job. Everybody's done a great job.
So thank you very
Oh,
much.
you're welcome. I know I get off the track a lot of times when you ask questions, but
Can I put this in front of a video camera and videotape your notes, and then that way it'll make a photocopy
Do
of
you
it?
want that, or can I maybe use those again? Recycling. Is the camera still rolling?
Yeah.
if you want to, you can take those.
Okay, I'll
I
take
can-
them too, but let me just get them on tape.
I'm sorry.
If I think of anything else interesting, I'll drop it off over there.
Yeah, please do.
Phone bill. Well, Harriet,
Yes?
good job for your first day of interviewing.
You really are the guinea pigs. Thank you, Terry.
stick that in your folder?
Sure.
Thank you both very, very, very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, you did.
I was in what's the name of the
And you
of
said
the
you
school?
helped write, when your boss had to make a presentation to somebody, you helped write a speech, you said?
Oh, I did things like that. Yeah.
How long have you guys been married?
61 years.
How many?
61 years.
Wow. You know, I was doing some research on the internet a couple of weeks ago on Neil James, and there's a guy who's writing a book about her. And he says that prior to her accident here in Mexico, she was actually a spy for the U.S. government. What do you make of that?
I never heard of that.
No.
Do you think it's true? Could it be possible?
It probably
Judy,
with
Judy,
Neil-
it probably could be possible, but I don't
With
think
Neil,
it's probable.
anything is possible. Because she was not a woman of her time. You know, she did things that women at that time simply did not do.
For instance,
She lived with the Eskimos, went on caribou trip across to
The frozen north.
stuff like that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I just wanted to hear what your thoughts were on that hypothesis.
I never heard of that. I wouldn't say it couldn't happen.
Okay.